Hello everybody, welcome back to part 3 of my Airbus A320 tutorial. Now, of course, this is also for A318, 19, 21, even an A330, although the startup will be different. Generally, everything will be very similar, so you should be able to follow this guide and get your flight completed at least, even if not in the most perfect way, if you're in something like an A330, or of course Beluga, since it's based off an A330. This will be the episode for the descent, the approach, and the landing. So very, very important when you're flying because, yeah, once you run out of fuel, you kind of have to do that. If you look here, we are once again in a new location. We are flying from Philadelphia to Toronto Pearson. You can see I hovered over the alternate, but in Toronto Pearson, CYYZ. Looks like we're pretty close, but I'm on the max range here of 320 miles. So we're getting there, but we still have quite a bit to go. I will skip ahead. I just want to look at all the charts and stuff while we're in cruise phase and get everything done nice and early. So we are cruising. We're at 36,000 feet. We're at a manual speed, not managed because it wants to go around here, and I got quite a bit of distance, so I sped it up just a little bit. But you can be in managed speed. You don't have to have something set here. The rest of the plane should be set up generally where we left off last time. Everything's set up for cruise. So let's just go ahead and look at what we need to do for descent. Here you can see just about how far we are. Descents are usually, within 70 or 80% of the way through the flight. It just depends how high you are, really. So you do want to have everything prepared, I'd say, before the halfway mark, just so you're all ready to go. Or at least look ahead at what you need, even if you're not going to enter all the information. So first we'll bring up our charts here. Go to the More Apps again, Navigraph Charts. And I'm going to unload a flight that's not relevant. It's not a flight we're on. And import flight. Of course, you're probably not needing to do this. Since you're already in the cruise phase, I'm sure you already have your flight loaded. If you don't know how to load the flight or create one through SimBrief, go ahead and watch part 1 of the series. We go ahead and make the flight plan and everything. So let's just hide this now. Here you can see the flight plan, and we're just on it now. We have to turn at PSB, and then WOSI, and then we go in for the descent. So if you look at the pin charts here, or remember for charts you can go to the charts tab if you're using Navigraph and click on the airport you want, CYYZ, click on this middle icon for charts, and you have all the options here. So the approach will be the ILS, the star will be the chart for the arrival, which we already have here. We should have it. Perfect. We do have 2. This is for runway 5 and 8. We are doing runway, let's just double check so you guys can see as well, 33 right. So Navigraph has gone ahead and pinned a bunch of charts. Let's unpin some. We don't need this one. We don't need this one. Come on, let's unpin them, please. We don't need this. I see they're all here. Okay. Let's unpin this. Oh, that's not really working. Let's just go to the runway we need. Let's not worry about unpinning them. So we're landing on 33 right, and we are doing the lining 3 arrival. So if you remember from earlier episodes, if we go in our SimBrief dispatch, you can see our route here, right? This is where we're landing, 33 right, and the arrival is this, ling 3. That's also called the star, so that's where you get the star charts here. So let's go to the ling 3. We'll hide this so we can get a better view at it. So this is the ling 3 arrival, and you can see there's the airport, there's all the information, and then it splits off here into 3 different points. Now, not all of them will do this, but a lot of them will, and these are called transition points. And that's what your flight plan is going to reference of where you connect to the arrival. So if we go back to SimBrief, you can see before ling 3 we have the WOSI transition. So if we go back to the chart again, here it is, the WOSI transition. So we're going to be coming in through WOSI and all the way in like this. And if I do the overlay button, you can see that's exactly what we're doing. So if I go back to this again, we want to look at altitude constraints so we know when to descend. Of course, there is automatic descents, and it knows constraints and it can descend for you. And same with Boeing, VNAV, it's going to descend for you, but we're not going to use that for this. There's manual calculations that you can do that will help double check those automatic systems. So while you're doing it, you should be doing those. But we're going to be doing it all manual here just to show you kind of how that's done. And then that'll help you when you learn the automatic systems, if they work, you'll be able to see if they work, which they don't always, especially on the Airbus A320 right now in 2024, which is also why we're not going to use it. So you can see here we're turning now at PSB to WOSI, which is perfect. We are quite far away from it, but that is our next waypoint. So we want to be looking for altitude constraints. We got to know when to go down, right? So first, we're just going to look through all the waypoints. WOSI, there's nothing. There's no blue altitude markers you remember from our departure. So next, where are we going? Going 19 miles, you can see it here, to Iston. Nothing here. 16 miles again to Linning. And here we go. We have some constraints. So we have to hit it at not max. You'll see a max of speed. This says at. So at 220 knots. That's what speed we have to be going exactly at. And 7,000 feet. So if you remember, the constraints have a line above and below. If this was just the top line and the number was below, you need to be below 7,000. If it was just the line below, so the number was above the line, think of U as the number, you have to be above 7,000. And it's on both, so that means we need to be at 7,000. So, and also, because we turned on constraints here, which I mentioned to do in the other episode, you can see those constraints of speed and altitude are actually shown right on here. Actually, just of speed. Possibly when we zoom in, it'll show the altitude. Honestly, I don't remember, the speed, but just the altitude is shown. Jeez, need another coffee. All right, 7,000. So we don't even need to worry about that though. Let's just look at the chart. So we need to get to 7,000 by Linning. So the calculation we're going to do, which is pretty simple for top of descent, just have your calculator on your phone or something ready. We need to see how much elevation do we need to lose to get there. Well, we have 36,000, so do 36 in your calculator, not 36,000, just 36 minus 7. Okay, that's the altitude you want to arrive at when you're done your descent. So 36 minus 7, that's 29. So 29,000 feet we need to lose before Linning, not before WOSI. So how do we know how far we need to descend that? So for a 3% glide slope, it's very simple. You're just going to take that 29 in your calculator times 3, and you get 87. So now you know you need 87 miles for this plane to go down at a 3% glide slope, which is standard for most airliners and airline companies. And we'll arrive 29,000 feet lower at 7,000 after 87 miles or so. Obviously, it's a rough calculation. It's good to double check the system, or just to do it yourself. You're going to want to do it a little earlier than that. Have some padding, because it's better to go down early than late. Often, such as this one where it requires 7,000, you have to be there at 7,000. If you're early, that's perfectly fine, as long as you don't have some other terrain or something like that. All it is going to do is not have the perfect fuel efficiency, which, it's a flight sim, so that's fine. So again, we need 87 miles. So if we look here, we have 102 for WOSI. So we definitely don't need to descend yet. Obviously, it's not also at WOSI, it's at Linning. So we have extra room on top of that. We have the 160 mile range selected. And you can see here's the 120 mark, and it's past that even. And since it's not straight, it's even more, since obviously turning is going to add a little bit more in terms of miles. So we have more than 120 miles with, again, we need 87. So we're going to wait until we get a little bit closer. Okay, so the next thing you want to do on cruise before we get to that top of descent, we're going to go again to charts, and this time APP, approach. So we have the arrival and we have the approach. And we're landing on runway 33 right. So let's scroll down to 33 right. Here it is, ILS 33 right chart. So let's grab this chart, and we'll pin it so it's on the bottom. They're yellow or orange actually, so easy to see. And we'll hide that. So here you can see if we go back to the 33 right arrival chart, that's not it, there we go. The last point you can see Ridod. You can actually see another waypoint there. There's the two runway 33s. We're on the right side. Back there's Ridod. If we go to the approach, imagine it like zooming into the runway. See, here's the two last points. And this is going to tell you just the final information about the elevation and the frequencies you need. So on the A320, it's nice and easy. During your cruise phase, see it says check destination data. It actually wants me to do what we're about to do. We're going to click rad nav and make sure this frequency is in there. See 110.3 ILE. You can worry about the frequency number, but also this should match. So if that was blank, you just put 110.3, enter. ILE would show up automatically because it recognizes. Because we imported the flight plan, it's already there, but you always want to double check, or things are not going to go well. Next, we're going to enter the destination data like it asked for. So let's go to progress, and you see we're in the cruise phase. Let's go in performance, again cruise. Next phase is descent, and next phase is approach. And now you can see an orange required information slot. It's the QNH, which is the altimeter of the airport we're arriving at. So let's close that and look over at our tablet here. We're going to update the destination information and look for the altimeter reading. Here it is, A altimeter 3005. So we're going to simply enter that in here, 3005, enter. We're going to put in the temperature, which is here. This is the temperature, that's the dew point. So -3, that's why it has an M. So 03 minus, sorry, minus 03. That did not work, my bad, minus 03, there we go. That's the temperature and the wind. It is, you look for the KT for knots to find it easy. 250 is the heading. The wind is at 250 slash 15 knots at 250. 15, there we go. And that is all you need to do. The information is entered, so we'll keep it on approach for there. Let's check our distance here to Linning. We are getting closer. Remember, again, our calculator says we need 87 miles. Here's 80. We're probably at about 100 right now. For the sake of the video, I think we're going to go ahead and start the descent. And we're just going to do it a little bit early. It's always better to go early. When I learned how to fly the A320, I was going way too early, not even intentionally. And then you get better and better at it and calculate it more, and you'll get it where you're closer and closer, which is just, again, more about fuel efficiency, not actually about what you need to do to get the plane there. Beautiful sunset here. It's very nice. All right, so let's go ahead and set our altitude. I am also going to just set the speed back to managed. Again, you can have it where it's already at that. I just want to do a little bit faster for the sake of the tutorial to get to this point. So it's going to bring it back to the speed it wanted to be cruising at. And let's set our altitude down to the constraint, which is, because again, we're doing this manually. If you were to use a automatic descent, you would set it all the way down to your ILS, which I'll just show that real quick. Again, our ILS altitude, oh, sorry, that's not it. Over here is this first altitude. See, 3,000 recommended. It sometimes is mandatory. Here it's recommended. You can be below. This is where the glide slope, you'll meet it, so you need to be at 3,000, so that's what we're going to worry about. At REDOD, we have to be at 3,000. Again, so if you were using automatic, you just set 3,000, and the plane would go down at the top of descent, but we're not doing that. So what we're worrying about first is going to 7,000. So let's go to 7,000. We'll set it here. And then before we click anything, we'll type in our ground speed into your calculator. Clear your calculator, type in 447. That's your ground speed in the corner, times 5. That's the speed we have to descend to maintain that 3% glide slope. So we'll click down on the altitude. It's going to go to open descent, and the plane will start descending to 7,000 on its own terms. It's going to figure it out, but we don't want that. We're going to go to vertical speed here, and that ground speed times 5 is 2235. So what I like to do is just give it a second here, have it start descending, and then use that speed. So actually, let's do that, because it's going to slow down a little bit to the speed it wants to descend at. What does it say? 433 times 5, and that's 2165. So we're going to go minus 2165, but of course we can't, so we'll round up always. To again, go earlier is better than later, and then select, which is down. And you'll see this change to vertical speed mode instead of open descent, minus 2200. So that's the speed we're going to be descending now. I am going to change the weather here just to make it daytime for the sake of the video. It's beautiful at night, but let's do that. Again, now I'm going to do it again, just because we've steadied off with speed. 414 times 5 is 2,070, so 2,100. I will do that. But again, remember, we can do that multiple times as the speed changes to make sure we're descending at a 3% glide slope. But we have to make sure also once in a while that the 3% glide slope is enough to get there on time. So Linning is now within our 80-mile range, so it switches to 80, and we can now see Linning there. It is about 80 miles, or sorry, 75 miles with a little bit of extra since returning, so about 80 miles away. So we need to calculate again, is that enough? We are about to hit 33,000, so let's use 33 minus 7. The altitude we have to get to is 26, so we have to lose 26,000 feet from now till then. Again, times that by 3, and you get 78. And do we have 78 miles? We have almost exactly 78 miles, I'd say. Just an estimate, so looks like we're good to go. So we'll clear that on the calculator and just keep descending. Now, the more you do that, technically the more accurate you'll be making corrections. You don't have to constantly do it, of course. You have other things to worry about. I will change the speed one more time. 405 times 5. 405 times 5 is 2,025. Our 2,100 number is still good for that. So in a little bit, we'll calculate it and make sure we can still have enough distance to descend. And if we don't, we'll change that. So for now, let's just leave that, and let's do what else we need for landing. Alright, I'm just going to bring you all back here. We're a bit closer now. I'm just going to do a quick recalculation to show that it does change once in a while. So let's see. We need, let's say 23,000. You usually want to get the next number, 23 minus 7. And that is 16,000 still to lose, times 3. We need 48 miles. If we look at the 40, obviously it's not 48 miles. It's a little extra with the track here, but let's say we need to go a little bit faster just for the sake of the calculation. If say this was like, I don't know, here, right? You need to hurry up. You don't have enough room. What you're going to do is you take your ground speed like normal, 362 times 5, which is now 1,800, so we're actually still going above. So let's, for the sake of this, just go back to 1,800. Minus, oh, come on. Very sensitive, minus 1,800. But we want to go a little bit faster than that calculation. We're going to take the 1810, which is the ground speed times 5, and say for this amount, because we're just about good, we're going to times by 1.1. Say you have half the distance you need, obviously you're going to times that by times 2 to get the speed you need to descend. I just want to go 10% faster, which is then 1991 minus 1991. So we will go to 2,000 just to make sure we are getting there on time. Now that we're at 20,000, the next thing to think about before, obviously when we turn, we'll have the exact reading. So we will do the calculation one more time. But before we do that, we're going to look at getting ready for the transition altitude. Okay, for the transition at 18,000, we're going to set the altimeter away from standard to the actual airport that we're arriving at, the altimeter that is current for that. Again, we will update just to make sure nothing has changed. It is 3003. It has changed, so it's actually just changed the information on here. 3003 for destination. And now let's set our altimeters now that we've hit 18,000. Let's set our main altimeter first. We're going to click it up so it's not in standard, and let's go to 3003. And we'll set our backup. Click it, and 30. Come on, it's zooming me in here. 3003. There we go. Now our altimeters are set. Let's just quickly check the weather information because it might have changed here. I believe it has. It is now -2. It's gotten slightly warmer. The wind is now 280, 25 knots. 280/25. So it's picked up quite a bit. It's moved slightly and picked up quite a bit, which will be interesting. All right, now that we've turned, we can see we have 24 miles. So let's do the calculation one last time here. We are about at 15. We'll say at 15,000 minus 7. So we got to lose 8,000 more times 3. We'll need 24 miles. This will be a good example. So let's see how much distance we have when we hit 15,000. Again, we need 24 miles to descend in time. There's 15,000 and we have 22. So we're just about there. Let's say 21. So let's go ahead and look at our ground speed. It's now 320 times 5, which is 1600. And again, we want to go a little faster. So let's times 1600 by 1.2 and we get 1920. Rounding up, of course, is 2000. So since actually it changed, we're just back. Luckily, we're at the new calculation speed already. If we had the right amount of distance, then we would actually want to slow this down. But since we are a little bit behind, we want to speed it up. Now that we're not focusing on this, the other thing that you typically do at 18,000 when you change your altimeters over, you're going to turn your passenger lights on. So seatbelt sign is going to come on. Your no smoking signs, which is usually now the no portable devices light, like I said, will come on. Some things we're going to get ready earlier for the approach is what we need for landing. That we can actually do early is the auto brake. You see it set to max, but usually in cruise you might see it just all off. You turned it on max for the takeoff, but sometimes it turns itself off like this. Typically I see it does. We're going to set it for medium. Most of the time you want medium. If you have a really long runway, you can go to low, which this is quite a long one, but we're going to keep it a medium for consistency's sake. That's what you'll normally want. And then we're going to come down to the speed brakes. They should actually be disarmed, since I loaded in this flight pretty late and just focused on what I needed. I forgot to do that, but this is what you normally see on cruise, because you can disarm them once you take off, and then we're going to arm them again, basically. And then that's it. Now we just continue waiting, getting closer and closer to Linning, or Ling, actually. I realize there's no I there. I've been calling it the wrong name the whole time. Again, we just need to hit 7,000 by that. We're only 10 miles out. So let's see if we can do that. If we can lose 3,000 times 3, obviously it's 9. So we need to lose 9,000 feet. Or sorry, 3,000 feet. We need 9 miles to do it. And we have 9.1, so that's perfect. Well, that's calculating at 10,000, so yeah, just close to perfect. So if we take our ground speed times 5, that's 1,500. So just to go a little faster, we can do 1,600. Since the speed is on managed, the plane is again managing it itself, and you can see it's slowly creeping down. That's why the ground speed is creeping down as well. It's doing that on its own. Now if we go ahead and look at our charts, we want to look at the approach chart, which is for the right runway is 33 right. And we should be showing up pretty soon now. So we hide this just to get a bigger view. Again, we're coming in at Linning here, right there. So there we are. Let's turn on the movie map feature. That's why we can't see it ourselves. Here we go. Again, we're supposed to be hitting 7,000 at Linning, and our calculations worked out pretty well. So we're 1.1 miles away, and here comes 7,000. So again, the plane can do most of that on its own sometimes, but it's just good to be able to do it on your own as well. Double checking your systems. So the next constraint, you can see there's no other speed constraints or altitude constraints. That's something I missed actually. Sorry, we were supposed to hit that at 220. It's a little bit distracted, my apologies, but beforehand you would have wanted to set 220 here. There we go. Tells the plane we need 220, so it's going to go to idle now. And while you were descending, you'd actually want to have got to 7,000 a bit early, because it needs some time to level off and decelerate. If you're only descending slowly, it can decelerate while you're flying, but otherwise it would need some extra time. But luckily we weren't going too fast for it, so it wasn't too big of a deal. Let's bring it into 20 miles here now. You can see the altitude it wants to be at, but if we look down here, there's no constraints in here, so we have to look at what do we need for ILS. Let's quickly go to the bottom to our ILS chart here. And remember at RIDOD over here, we need to be at 3,000 feet. So let's go to 3,000 feet. A little bit late. I would be doing that in advance, but explaining things and doing them at the same time is a little bit difficult. So we'll have it automatically descend to 3,000, and then we can do our calculation to see what we need. We have to lose 4,000 feet from 7 to get to 3. Times that by 3, we need 12 miles. And you can see we do not have 12 miles. We probably have about half of that to be safe. So we'll take our ground speed of 241. Again, it's going to be drilled into your memory, times 5. And we want to do it at double, so times that by 2. That's 2,500 feet per minute we need to lose. So let's just go even faster than that. Let's do 2,600 feet per minute. There we go. So it was only doing 1,500, so we're going to tell it to really step it up here. That should get there in about 6 miles. Let's actually go a little bit faster. Calculation's a bit outdated already. Let's just do 2,800 to make sure we get there. Now, if you're descending this quickly, you've got to watch your speed. It's going faster than I'm telling it to, even with idle engines. So we're going to have to use some speed brake to help it out here. So disarm the speed brake and pull it back. Sometimes you'll need half, sometimes you'll need more. Watch this arrow, you can see how your speed is trending. It's trending upwards. So we're going to bring it all the way back just to help it out here. To help it get it's not going to help the descent rate because we set that manually, but it's going to help it manage its speed. So even descending at this fast of a rate, it's not going to be speeding up as much because we have the speed brakes out. If we did that in advance, we wouldn't need that. We'd be ascending slower, and that would be more fuel efficient, but this is okay. As we're now getting close, we're going to want to go down here. Oh, let's clear this. The approach, it doesn't say activate approach phase. If it did, you'd activate. It already is activated though. So that's good. We are going to come over here. Now arm the approach. Click on the APPR button. And we're going to press LS to get the localizer to show up. And you can see here it is. It says Cat 3 single. The localizer is green. It's been intercepted. And now we're at 3,000 at RIDOD. Which, see, 3,000 at RIDOD. This is recommended. The really important time is 3,000. Sorry, let's just turn off my speed brake here and disarm it again. So it's armed for landing. Make sure you do that if you're using your speed brake. Let's just pause it here so I don't have to speed talk and I can explain what's going on. So now that we're at 3,000 again, deactivate it and then arm it. You can see we're at RIDOD. We're at 3,000. We're going to stay level. And we're going to intercept the glide slope, and this is ILS. It's going to take it in for you. Activating the approach phase, it needs to happen. We didn't need to because it did it automatically. But if you, instead of previous phase, you would see a big blue activate approach. You'd click that, and it would go gold. Are you sure? Click it again, and it's activated. That does not arm it. So now that you're on track, there's no more turns, and you're at the altitude you need to be intercepting the glide slope, so this altitude, we will arm it, which is why we did APPR. So now we're telling the plane when you hit the glide slope, automatically go ahead and descend. You're allowed to. Otherwise, you're just going to keep flying at 3,000. It won't do anything. So now the glide slope, imagine it like a line that keeps going all the way up. Okay, where my cursor is, here's the glide slope, roughly. And we're here, so we haven't intercepted it. It's above us. That's how you can imagine how the glide slope is above you. And there, this diamond here, this pink diamond, is the glide slope. And it's way up. So it's going to come down, and you'll see it. As we get closer, it's going to get closer and closer to us. And when we hit this point, it's going to intercept it. And it's going to take our plane all the way down. Right now, we are 15 miles from the airport. So we don't need gear, and we don't need flaps. Yet, flaps are going to be related to speed, but we will talk about speed in just a second here when we press play. Sometimes that messes with the plane a little bit, so yeah, we'll just make sure we're okay. I would like to set it to 200 knots here. Now that we're getting a bit closer. The slower you go, the more time you have to react to things. 10 miles is going to be a big one for us. We're going to put our gear down. I'm going to turn the landing gear just to off. You don't have to do that. You can wait till you get to that point to turn it on, but that will take it out of the wings because it, again, retracts into the wings. Here it is now. And we're just above 10 miles, so let's go ahead and turn the landing lights on. Our passenger lights are on. We'll turn the runway turn off and the nose lights on to taxi. Of course, they're on the gear, which are not down yet. And you see the glide slope is now starting to come down as it meets us. We're almost at where it's going to intercept. Oh, here, activate approach phase. Confirm. So it actually wasn't activated, so I'm glad I saw that. So now that it's activated, and you get to see how to do that. Sometimes it is automatic. And the approach is armed, APPR. We should see the glide slope. Here it is, it's blue. That means it's armed and ready to intercept it. And here comes the diamond, it's coming lower and lower. Now we're 10 miles from the runway. Let's put our gear down. And let's go 190 knots. That's for 9 miles, actually. I like to do 9 miles, 190. We're going to set our first setting of flaps. And then at about 8, we just continue slowing down. At about 8, you do about 180. So for this tutorial's sake, I'm going to go to 170 now, just to get things done a little bit earlier. You can see our landing gear is out. Our lights are all on. We're going to go to the next setting of flaps now. You can see we're about to intercept the glide slope. We actually are descending. So we're on the glide slope. That's why it's gone green. We have intercepted it. We're just slightly above. And that's just the plane doing its thing. It's trying to get as close as it can. Let's go to 10 here to see our range. And now we're about 5 miles away, so we're going to go 150. And finally, let's go to 140. And let's set full flaps. And we are going to be doing what's called a Cat 3 auto land. We're going to turn on the second autopilot. Normally, you'd want to take over at any point. I'm not sure how the auto land is going to work in 2024, how well it will work. It's definitely a rough kind of landing in real life, but it works in conditions that are extremely, extremely bad. So normally you would not use this, so we're kind of doing it as a test as well. I also don't have my yoke set up, so my landing might not be the best, but this is more of a test. You wouldn't do this. You can keep one autopilot on, and you deactivate autopilot and auto throttle once you get close, and you'll land the plane. So now that we are getting very close, we're going to change, instead of 140 knots, which you see we're at, we're going to change to manage speed, which will probably keep it around 140, but it might go up or down, as you can see. Especially if you're doing an auto land, you need to do that. Sometimes at the point of switching to manage speed, you would simply deactivate everything and take over. I am going to pause the video here just for a moment to make sure I have done everything correctly on my checklist here. So we'll actually review it together. We have the passenger lights on, of course. It's not a priority, but let's go through everything. Passenger lights are on. Exterior lights, nose is on taxi. Landing lights are on. Runway turnoff lights are on. Strobe, of course, all that stuff's from before. We have the approach armed, which you would know if you're descending. We have both autopilots on because we are doing a Cat 3 dual, an auto land. We have the speed brakes armed. You can see it's the silver there. It's up. It's armed. It's ready to deploy the spoilers once you hit the ground. And the auto brake is set to 2. That's what we want for this runway. It can be on 1. This is a long runway. It'd probably be fine, but we're going to do 2. That's what you normally will use. All right, let's look forward and let's see how the Airbus can auto land. Let's see how well this goes. Again, I wouldn't recommend this. This is for certain conditions. In real life, it's allowed to be used, but only in those conditions. So we'll go ahead and see. You can see our landing lights there, our taxi lights, and our runway turnoff lights are these small little ones on the side. They do quite a bit when you're on the ground at night. You can see the poppy lights, 2 white and 2 red is what you're aiming for. Red is low, white is high. So now we're a little low, which is why there's 3 reds. So you're aiming for 2 and 2. But again, we're doing an auto land, so let's see what happens. Hopefully the plane flares a little bit here,
100.
so we don't have the worst landing ever. At least we're lined up. That's important. You're going to get ready to use your brakes, but auto brake will use a little bit for you, so keep that in mind. There you go. Quite a rough landing for auto land, but not too bad. And it wasn't really too rough, but it was alright. It looks like autopilot is continuing, and it's actually doing auto reverse thrust. Interesting. And auto brake is happening. The brakes are being applied automatically. Not sure how much reverse thrust is happening, so we're gonna... Okay, it wasn't reverse thrust. It disengaged auto throttle, and my throttles were up, so it actually was applying power. That's my bad. I am now in reverse thrust. And we'll go back to nothing. There we go. But when you're just decelerating and using reverse thrust at about 60 knots is where you want to pull off the power and just use your brakes and spoilers. Again, auto brake will stop when you use your manual brakes. So as soon as you're getting quite slow, you start using them and your auto brake will turn off. And typically, I believe your spoilers will fall on their own. But if they don't, you can pull them back like that and it pulls the spoilers down. And then you're going to exit the runway where you're told or where you can. Let's go ahead and exit the runway here. This warning is caused by autopilot being off. That's just so far been a 2024 thing in flights, and I'm not 100% sure why it's doing that, so hopefully it doesn't do it the whole time. Let's stop here. Usually want to stop after this line, but we're not a VAT sim or anything, so we're okay to just stop right here to show you what to do next. Now you're out on the ground. You're going to want to turn off your landing lights and your runway turn-off lights, so you just have your taxi lights on. You're going to want to start your APU. So if you remember, just click the APU on and click the start. So then while we're taxiing, it's doing its whole ramp up and start. Let's take our parking brake off and open up the airport chart, which we can continue to scroll over here and find it here. The 10.9 of the airport. We're going to be trying to ATC gave us some instructions. We're going to turn left on Echo here. And we will cross the runway again over to the gates on that side. Another thing you do now that you're taxiing is set your flaps to 0. And your flaps will retract. Again, you're going to be doing all of this with ATC permission and following their instructions of where to go. For the tutorial's sake, I'm just taxiing to the nearest gate. We're going to turn left here. You get your permission to cross the runway. We'll go ahead and cross as if we have it. You can see again the spoilers are down. The flaps are up. And the landing lights are gone. The runway turn-off lights are off. It's just the taxi light we're using. If you were turning on or off a runway, then of course that's what you use your runway turn-off lights for. Okay, so we're pulling into our gate now. We don't have a marshaller here, so we'll just kind of guesstimate. We'll slow down quite a bit. I only have full brakes or no brakes with the controls I'm using right now, so the braking is going to be quite jerky, so excuse me for that. Use the exterior view to get myself lined up here. Well, this is for a different plane, actually, so let's just stop before the markers. So even then the jetway which isn't connected in the first place, is not going to be able to get to us, but that's okay. It's just a sim. So let's go to the cockpit view, and of course we already have our APU started, which is perfect. If you don't, this is when you would do it, and you'll have to wait for it to start up. Luckily we already do, so the APU is going to take over powering the plane, so we can shut down our engines right away. Shut down engine 1, and give it a couple seconds, and engine 2. There goes the engines. Of course, we're trying to get to external power, so we need the engines off so the ground crew can hook it up, but in that meantime we'll need the APU to power the plane. That's why we have it on. So the engines are spooling down. You can see them here. And once they're spooled down, you'll turn off your beacon, which will indicate to the ground crew that they can go hook up the ground power unit and get close to the plane. You'll go to ground and do toggle GPU, toggle jetway, toggle anything you want. So jetway is going to be hooked up. The APU is hooked up. Since it's hooked up, we can turn off the APU now. Sorry, I just said APU again. The ground power unit is hooked up. So let's do external power. You can see it's available now. And turn off the APU. Turn off the window heat and the anti-ice. And we'll go ahead and turn off the passenger lights so they can get up and get out of here. There we go. Those are off. And if you look ahead, we can turn off the IRS to off. And our crew supply oxygen can go to off. Basically the startup in reverse. Now we're going to come down here and click APU. Whoops. And check that everything is at 0. So it's not providing any power, not providing any air, but it is still running a little bit. So we'll just wait for it to spool down a little bit more. Obviously you'd be waiting some time for your passengers and cargo to be unloaded. You can see the exhaust is still coming out here. That reminded me, I did not properly turn off the lights. The strobe light is something that can come off once you're on the ground. Let's turn our wing lights off now though. This can come off now. Our local lights. And the taxi light, as soon as you pull in, can come off. Now the APU is fully spooled down and everyone is out of the plane, we'll say. Let's go ahead. Sorry, the TCAS system. That's one more thing. My apologies. Changes from TARA, which is the traffic alert, to standby, and the ATC to standby. We will then turn off the plane completely, back to cold and dark. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the batteries. Battery 2, battery 1, and then disconnect the external power. So we were running off battery and then just strictly external power, and now we're cold and dark. So again, this is more of a beginner guide series. It's not going to help you be an absolute professional, but it will help you start. So hopefully that has helped you out. I know the first episode has. I've gotten plenty of nice comments from you guys. I didn't expect that, honestly, but I do really appreciate it. So I hope you guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one.